Welcome to our 9th edition of EDI Interview. I'm Marta Sturzanu from Romanian Energy Center, and today with me are representatives of DNV, an independent expert organization in risk management and assurance operating in more than 100 countries. Here we have Santiago Blanco, Executive Vice President and Regional Director in DNV's Energy Systems area, covering South Europe, Middle East, Latin America, and Africa, and Ricardo Álvarez, Digital Assurance and Supply Chain Operations Manager. I'm glad to have you both here.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
In this session, we will try to address topics related to EDI project, like EDI project outcomes, skill gaps, training, and digitalization. So I will start my first question with Mr. Blanco. DNV is a world-leading provider of digital solutions for managing risk and improving safety and asset performance for ships, pipelines, processing plants, offshore structure, and also electric grids, smart cities, and a lot of other topics. But what do you find most pressing nowadays regarding digital solutions in the energy systems business area?
Thank you, Marta. Yes, I think that if we think in the challenge that we have today in the energy sector, basically we have one big challenge that is to move faster in the energy transition. And from this point of view, the energy transition has a lot of advantage, but obviously it also connects with the complexity of a much more complex system. And this complexity requires the digitalization of all the assets and the operation in the system. So we know that with the current technology, there is a lot of room for improvement in the way we manage the infrastructures, the grid, the network, and also the assets. You talked about offshore, and this is a good example, but the new system, the new energy system, instead of the original unilateral system of big generation plants and with passive customers and with a transmission distribution network moving the energy from those huge conventional plants to the passive customer, is much more bi-directional and like a grid, a mesh of players. Like in my own case, with my PV rooftop at home, sometimes consuming, sometimes generating, my electric car, all these interactions will require first a system much more intelligent based on digitalization, yes, a permanent monitoring of the operations, and a much better maintenance of the assets. And digitalization will be key, and mainly, and finally, perhaps the most important, will also be key to connect the customers and to offer them, like in my case with the apps here, the possibility to be proactive in the way we as a consumer participate in the energy system.
I see. Thank you for your answer. Mr. Álvarez, DNV has its own training department, but it is at the same time a public training provider. How the company had changed or it will change the training areas or the certification services in order to be in line with the energy transition towards carbon emission neutrality?
Yes, yes, indeed, we have a portfolio of services related to the sustainability and also the specific climate change issue. There is no way that climate change is threatening our way of life and the future of the planet. This is something we all have in mind. So it is necessary to act to ensure the sustainability and the environment, and the companies and our clients are working on that. On the other hand, the regulatory and institutional field is also committed to this path of decarbonization. So there is a big opportunity for companies to be also part of the solution, not only the problem. So to reduce and eliminate the carbon emissions on the operations of the companies, first of all, the companies must analyze their main risks on the climate change part of their operations. After analyzing the risks, they normally start calculating the base year emissions and also the progress of their emissions along the time. But this needs to be done in a reliable manner, and you need to provide credible data, a credible number to the stakeholders, to the market. So, in this point, also it's important to have a credible communication on the impact of your greenhouse gas emissions of your company or even of your products sometimes, no? So, including if some companies are already working on the neutrality. So, here is where DNV is present, because we normally verify this performance and we verify the data and the associated declarations of the companies showing that they have been carried out in a credible manner, in a solvent manner, with proven methodologies and international reference standards. So this is the way that to assure you have a rigor to the approach of the communication. So we have the knowledge, we have the experience, we have been working on the climate change field from many years ago. So in this sense, we carry out verifications to evaluate this according to international standards like ISO 14064. This is talking about the corporate inventory emissions. Also, GHG protocol is another good reference international standard that normally sometimes the companies use. This is coming on the inventory, corporate inventory side, but also some companies are working already on the footprint of their products, what they sell and what they launch to the market. No, and for this we also have there are international standards available like ISO 14067 and also GHG protocol products. There is also a possibility of methodology to be used. And when coming back to the carbon neutrality part, there is also some international standards like PAS 2060. This is coming from the UK that can be followed. So coming back to your question, Marta, the tools we have in DNV, we had in the past, and we are changing every year, no, to adapt to the new legislations, to the new market needs, and to the new standards and the new methodologies that appear from time to time. We have, as you said, we have training courses. We provide training to our customers, public courses or in-house, talking about these international standards. For the clients, help and understand very well which are the requirements and what the effort they need to do and the resources needed to prepare a proper inventory report or to prepare a proper product footprint. We also perform these verifications against these international standards. And well, also we have some let's say services related to the digital blockchain technology, using blockchain technology of the products. When the companies claim some emissions or some neutrality, we can provide also some communication using this new technology.
I see. Thank you. Mr. Blanco, working with different European businesses, how do you see the gaps between the current and future demand of skills necessary for the digitalization of the energy sector?
Good question. Well, it depends in each country, in each company, in each provider. But I think that there is still a big room for improvement. I think that in the last 10 years, for instance, here in Spain, we had the wonderful experience of the implementation of the smart meters. Now in Spain, almost 100% of the residential customers, we are digitally connected with a smart meter. But for instance, in this case, the utilities are doing a wonderful work developing new tools to capture and manage and make value with the information they are collecting. But basically, I think that in the grid, with the customers, in the renewable generation, there is still a lot of room for new developments of intelligence, to transform this tsunami of data in information, and this information in value, in value. So I think that again, this will make the system safer, will make the operation more efficient. But the most important, I think, that we have the main challenge is to ensure the active participation of the customer. And I think that this is one of the focus where we need to have the gap we have in the digitalization in terms of the integration of the customers. And for this, obviously, we will need new skills, new providers, new solutions, that I know that the technology companies are developing, but for sure still a lot of implementation.
Yeah, I think that all the actors must be involved in this process. Mr. Alvarez, what risks the blueprint, the central product of EDI project, can encounter during project implementation, but also after the end of the project, from your point of view?
Yes,
and maybe how can we avoid them?
Sure. EDI project is a complex project because there are many partners from different countries with different profiles. And DNV is in charge of the quality part. So we work hard on the initial part of the project to define and identify together with the partners, together with all the partners with the consortium, to identify the risks, the most critical risks that the project could encounter. We identified 25 risks, including COVID, of course, but we needed to classify these risks, and we classified between financial, reputation, meeting the project objectives, which are quite challenging and quite ambitious, and the stakeholders part. And just to give you an example of some of the risks we identified, for example, the first one was the impact of a partner leaving the consortium that sometimes happen in some European projects, and how to avoid that, and if it happened, how to act. So every risk, all of these 25 risks, have an action plan associated. Another important risk, taking into account the different countries, different profiles, it was the intra-project communication was also a risk that we needed to have control over it. So I think we have, because there are many meetings along the year. The project is mainly based to be online. I mean, we try to not to have presential meetings because of COVID, but also because the project in the initial design was thought like this. Also, a very important risk and quite critical could be the resistance of the industry and the universities to change, because the EDI project proposed a change on the studies, on the skills, but also on the studies of the related to the energy. Another risk could be that the EDI project was not interesting for the market, for example, or a lack of interest from the students. So these are the kind of risks that we have. And also very important risk is that the project maybe is not able to cover, to have an adequate coverage of all green and digitalization skills. So I know that the partners in charge of that are working very hard to have this identification in a very good manner. So I'm coming to your question. Of course, the long-term sustainability of the project is another risk that it's always need to be taken into account. So all the risks have an action. Some of these risks this action need to be started, need to be in place, some not. And And the way we can avoid the risk or the impact of this risk is a very close cooperation or interaction with all the partners. We are doing this by means of a lot of meetings, different kind of meetings, project meetings, working package meetings, board meetings internally, but also interacting with external bodies like the consortium has identified as the International Advisory Board. This is very important because it's providing external views, external opinions, and external thoughts about the EDI project, which is helping us very much. So it's giving us very good input with a different view. Also, to avoid the risk, of course, very good communication, transparent communication with the agency, the European agency that is under control of this project. So it's very important to know their expectations, and when they have some feedback, be able to provide a correct answer to them. No? And at the end of this, of course, the deliverables, the project is thought to have a lot of deliverables, and we need to control the quality of these deliverables, the impact of this deliverable, to assure these producing documents are relevant, and of course are updated to this very changing market. The market is changing very fast. So especially on the energy digitalization field. So these are the ways we are using to avoid the risks of the project.
I see, thanks. And now shifting the discussion to the closing topic, let me ask you about your hobbies. Mr. Blanco, what are you doing when you are not working? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, in this moment, thinking on my holidays that will start in a couple of days, and I love sailing. I think that as part of the energy transition, wind is a relevant component, and nothing better than sailing with a nice wind that I hope I will be sailing in some days. And additionally, I love sports. I love to be with my friends. I think that several topics, but now especially sailing in a couple of days.
That's great. Let's hope that you'll have a good weather.
A lot of wind.
Yeah. And Mr. Álvarez, the same. What are you doing when you are not working?
Well, on our daily job, we are reading a lot of technical papers. So when I'm not working, I try to read, but non-technical issues, like, I don't know, old literature or classical literature, just to have a different world, to help me to understand a little bit more where we are, And as I work on the sustainability field and on the environmental field, I like very much the contact with the nature. So I'm living outside of Madrid City in the surrounding area. So I'm lucky because I can go out and walk on the mountains. And this is what I do when I'm not working, just to try to relax for a while.
That's great. That's great. So to conclude this meeting, let me say thank you for this conversation. It was a very pleasant one.
Okay.
Thank you all also for watching, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marta.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
Goodbye.